How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with The Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Suitable Flesh. This is from 2023 and was put out on Shudder. This is directed by Joe Lynch and stars Heather Graham, Judah Lewis, and Barbara Crampton, and is based on the story The Thing at the Doorstep by H.P. Lovecraft. So right off the bat, lots of stuff here to hook horror fans. Shudder and Barbara Crampton recently put out Jacob's Wife, a really good movie, and I was glad they made more with her. I think she's on an episode of Creepshow as well, and she did a few other things. So cool to see them continuing that relationship. But also, Barbara Crampton in a new H.P. Lovecraft adaptation, always gonna catch my attention. She obviously quite famously did the Gordon films. You had the trilogy there of Reanimator, From Beyond, and Castle Freak. And this is actually written by Dennis Paoli, who was the writer of Reanimator and From Beyond. I think the story was Barbara Crampton called him up and asked him if he had any old scripts that never got produced, and he handed her this one. And yeah, that's really cool. I mean, Stuart Gordon obviously passed away a few years ago. Really sad the film is actually dedicated to him, which is a nice touch. But the idea that we're living in an era of movies where something like this, kind of a belated Gordon Lovecraft movie is just cool that we actually get to see it come out. And it came out pretty well. It's a really good movie. The thing with this one is it does swing for the fences, and I really do like that. I feel that modern art house horror movies, I mean, there are lots of good ones, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are becoming kind of formulaic. Formulaic and serious horror movies, whatever, I don't care. And it seems like the ones that do embrace horror's over-the-top nature are usually doing it in a winking and nudging ironic way. But with this movie, we have a movie with good production value, good acting, good directing, good cinematography. It's all done very well and taken seriously, but at the same time is not afraid to embrace horror's more extreme, over-the-top, and sometimes cheesy elements, you know? We get the titular thing at the doorstep, which in this version, yeah, it doesn't actually make it to a doorstep, but it's still that disturbing, messed up creature that we want to see on film with a good makeup effect. Whenever they do a sci-fi body swapping thing, boy does the camera work go nuts and extreme. And there's even one shot that I was surprised they did, where a character puts the bloody knife on the Necronomicon, and it's right on top of a picture of Cthulhu, and the blood gets soaked into the page, and then there's a little wormhole transition where the circle kind of goes right into Cthulhu's face, and then fade to black, and I'm like, that was such an on-the-nose, kind of cheesy shot that I was really surprised that they would do it nowadays, but I did love it. You know, that's the thing, is it was cheesy, it was on the nose, but it was done with the right spirit. It was done because that's what we want to see. And I think even though this film is a very different beast, it did remind me of James Wan's *Malignant*. The idea that we loved these extreme moments from 80s horror, we want to bring them back, but we don't want to be jokey about it. We want to be legit and serious and say, this is what we love, this is what we want to see in horror movies, and doing something that's kind of cheesy, but 100% purposefully. Yeah, no, I really did like that. The movie flows really well, it has a good pace, I think it's over an hour and a half long, but honestly is one of those that just blows by, because you're constantly into it, and you're constantly just wanting to know what happens next and how the characters will play off each other. Now, much like the earlier Stuart Gordon H.P. Lovecraft films, it is a bit of a loose adaptation, kind of a reimagining, but still really good. you get things like the main character not being socially awkward in this one. You do get things where it's like it's set in the modern day, so you have to write in cell phones and stuff. And we do also meet the body swap character one step earlier than we did in the Lovecraft story. But despite all these changes, it still has the right plot structure. Like, it still, even though it's a reimagining, it very much is the thing at the doorstep. And there's even little things like the 3-2 knocking pattern, which is a tiny detail from the story that does get brought over into this. And I do like that even though this is a reimagining, and even though they do change a lot, they still do keep the spirit and the feel of the original story, and I think that's pretty cool. Now, obviously, one of the biggest changes is there are some gender reversals in this, and much like Reanimator and From Beyond, there's a more heavy sexual leaning in this movie, but I do actually think what they did here was quite clever and different. If they had kept it where it was a male main character, it would have been way too easy to get into a cliched plot judging heterosexual men for their sexuality. But here we're going on unexplored territory, or at least relatively unexplored, talking about the female gaze and getting this young man that's her patient and too young for her, and she's married anyway, but he kind of becomes like the male version of a femme fatale, and it is interesting and different, and besides, it's just well thought out, well written, and interesting, so I do think that it was an interesting way to kind of turn the situation on its head and talk about something that doesn't get talked about near as much. Overall, why it's not as good as, like, Reanimator, it still is a worthy addition to the Stuart Gordon line of films, and if you guys are going on a marathon wanting to watch them all, I definitely would throw this one onto the pile and watch it with the rest of them. Yeah, not quite as good as Gordon, but still a really good movie, and I really did like where this went. I sat down, I watched it all really quickly, I was never really bored, I was constantly engaged, and I like that it really swung for it and went big. Now that I've done my base review, I want to dig in, talk a little deeper, talk about some of the plot specifics, and do a little bit of an analysis. No major spoilers, but let's dig down a little deeper for this next segment. So I won't cover the end, but let's analyze. We open up in the present. Barbara Crampton is a doctor, and we get two things. One, there's a corpse that's so messed up that the guy working in the morgue says, wow, it's hard to believe this was even human. They don't show it to us yet, though. Good hook. And then we find out that a former doctor is now a patient here, locked up in a padded cell, and Barbara Crampton was her best friend, and she says, tell me the story from the beginning and explain what happened. And again, not exactly like the Lovecraft story, but the Lovecraft story did begin with, I just did a horrible thing, here's how it happened. So I do like the framing mechanism here, a note to the original, but still different and still really piquing our curiosity. Anyway, we go back in time. The doctor that was in the asylum is Heather Graham's character, and we find out she's a successful psychologist, and she has a nice, loving husband who's kind of jokey and happy, and things are going relatively well for her, even if things are a bit formulaic and stale. And she has published a book about the psychological reasons behind people having an out-of-body experience, which will get this kid coming to her office. I say kid, he's a college student, and he says, something's wrong. I had an out-of-body experience. I think my dad is trying to possess me. And of course, I like how her dialogue works, where when she's talking to someone, she's analyzing them and asking probing questions, which gets them to talk and she can analyze further. And I like how she starts to think, okay, obviously I don't believe in possessions or body swapping, but maybe there was some trauma that would create this idea. And I like how she digs down, but he gets a phone call, and the phone call, he hears someone saying magical words on the other end. He'll have a seizure, and when he wakes up, he's acting like a completely different person. And we get sort of the body swap element there. And I do like, with this, they really do play on it, and they do get a lot out of the concept. For example, you have to have really good actors when doing a body swap story, because you have to convey the same character with different people, and you have to be able to believe that this other actor's portrayal of the same character is the same person and actually sell it with the audience. So a fair amount of good acting there, but also being creative with it, like the idea that you could do this through the phone for a long distance spell, or just varying things like, how do I convince someone I am who I am? There's a lot of puzzle piecey elements to it, and I think that is pretty interesting. And, you know, they don't explain right away what's going on. I mean, the cover of the DVD does say body swap right there on the front, but it is kind of a gradual reveal as they learn more about it, and, you know, she starts to piece it together a little slowly, but at the same time, you wouldn't really expect to be in a body swap story. But when the guy wakes up after a seizure, he's rude, but at the same time, a little bit of like that bad boy charming, and that's going to lure her in more than it should. But she kind of breaks the rules where she's not supposed to really get involved, and she winds up getting involved. She even goes to his house. She's kind of lured there. And of course, the sexual tension, which is definitely something she's not supposed to do. And again, I spoke on that earlier, but it is something interesting and different to analyze here. And it's definitely a case of being lured too far, getting in over your head, and having crazy stuff happen. And I don't think I'll talk too much more about the plot beyond this point, but I do want to say, when we get to the finale, tons of blood, fun fight sequences, a good big over-the-top end. It's one of those where I did check the time because I was curious how much we had left, and it was like, I think it was like, I checked when we had 20 minutes left, and I'm like, whoa, we got 20 whole minutes left? We're gonna do a whole lot. And we did. There was, a good helping at the end of just crazy extreme stuff, and it was a really fun conclusion. So overall, I had fun with this. It's a movie that I really am glad Shudder was able to put out, and I would love to see more stuff like this. Not only a good horror movie with good production values, but leaning into the past, something us horror geeks really care about, and to get to see something with, even though obviously Gordon's no longer involved, I like the movie is dedicated to him, but getting to see people pick up this genre and carry it over. I don't know if the writer has any other scripts lying on the table, but if he does, I would love to see them. And I mean, hey, there's a ton of H.P. Lovecraft stories that need adaptations. I would love to see some of those. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you guys want to see me talk about more stuff, you can find that right there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.